What if I told you one of the most interesting superhero movies came out before superhero movies even ruled Hollywood? Today, I am starting something new. I'm going to start reviewing older films that were overlooked, misunderstood, or just maybe even ahead of its time. And there may be no better place to start than Mystery Men. Now, if you haven't seen this film, here's a quick little glimpse of it. Released in 1999, Mystery Men was directed by Kinka Usher, and this was actually his first and only feature film. And before he directed high concept commercials, and you could absolutely feel that the movie's bold, stylized production design. What a lot of people don't realize is that the movie is actually loosely based on an indie comic series called Flaming Carrot Comics by Bob Burden. This wasn't Marvel, this wasn't DC, this was a weird, offbeat, underground superhero satire. And in 1999, that was sort of a gamble. This was before X-Men, this was before Spider-Man, Sam Raimi's Spider-Man. After a decade before the MCU even launched. Superheroes were not yet quite as dominant at the box office. I remember this was probably the same year that Blade just came out, which was around 1999, around that time. So Blade had just came out, and that was a big hit. But prior to that, there wasn't really like a lot of success in superhero films other than Batman and Superman. Now, let's talk about Ben Stiller. In 1999, he was in his transitional phase. He had The Ben Stiller Show, he directed Reality Bites. He had just come off the huge success of There's Something About Mary. But he wasn't quite yet the box office titan that he was in the 2000s, like, with Meet the Parents, et cetera, et cetera. Here he plays Mr. Furious, a hero whose power is literally getting stronger when he gets angry, which is such a perfect Ben Stiller role. He's got that insecure, neurotic, bottled up rage energy. And he wasn't alone. The cast in this film is stacked. You got William H. Macy, Hank Azaria from The Simpsons, Janine Garofalo, Paul Reubens, Pee Wee Herman, and Jeffrey Rush as a ridiculously theatrical villain. Now, you gotta remember, Jeffrey Rush was an Oscar winner at this point, I believe, or he was definitely in Oscar-bait films. And so to see him in this film was very strange and odd because he was such a high-caliber performance. Now, there's just an incredible collection of comedic talent in this film, and many of them in their prime. Just assembling that group into one film was impressive. So, let's talk about the film itself, the world of the film. The film itself takes place in Championship City, okay? And this is a heightened comic book metropolis that feels very staged on purpose. It actually reminds me a bit of the Jim Carrey movie, The Mask, where the environment feels artificial, like colorful, exaggerated. Sorry, I'm spraying something, my spray in my mouth to help my throat. So you can tell a lot of it is, they spent a lot of money on built stage, practical effects. And there's obviously some green screening here as well. It's theatrical, it's heightened reality. And now let's kind of get into the tone. The tone is a very strange in my book. It's weird. It's a parody, but not a broad parody. It's absurd, but everyone plays it completely straight. And that tonal balance is part of why this movie is kind of a strange enigma to me. So let's kind of dive in to my thoughts of the film itself. So when I first watched Mystery Men, I didn't realize it, I didn't understand it at its time. And watching it almost 30 years later, I don't fully know that I still do understand it. It's even 30 years later, it's strange, it's uneven, it's never really makes me laugh out loud the way I expect a comedy to, especially one with Ben Stiller and just so many other comedic talents. But here's what's changed for me a little bit. I appreciate it a little bit more now, not because honestly, we live in a world where, we are completely dominated by superhero films to the point where the term superhero fatigue is a common theme. We've got shared universes, multiverse storylines, billion-dollar franchises. And Mr. Men was spoofing superhero culture before superhero culture fully existed. That's bold, that's ahead of its time. It was making fun of tropes that hadn't even become cliches yet. And while I don't think it fully lands its comedically for me, I respect the ambition, I respect the swing, I respect that a studio was willing to spend real money on something this weird and original. Today, studios are throwing $30 to $40 million on an offbeat superhero satire based on an obscure comic. That kind of creative risk feels rare now, and the more time passes, the more I think we're going to appreciate movies that tried something different, even if they didn't quite connect. So, let's dive into my final thought. At its core, Mr. Men is about misfits, people who don't feel powerful, people who don't feel important, people who don't feel seen, and they choose to show up anyway. They choose to help anyway. They choose to try. And maybe that's why this movie hits differently now than it did when I first saw it, because we're living in a world that feels loud, divided, and sometimes cruel. And in a world where you can be anything: powerful, famous, successful, sarcastic, critical, why not choose to be kind? Why not choose to be loving? Especially to strangers, especially to people you don't know what they're carrying. The world can be hard enough already. It's a little weird that a superhero comedy from 1999 can remind us that ordinary people stepping up matters, and that kindness matters. Then maybe it was ahead of its time in more ways than one. I'm Box Office Ricky, and I will see you next time. Thank you guys so much for watching. Enjoy the rest of your week.